The marketplace buzzed with the chatter of 100 alien tongues. Neon lights flickered against the smog-filled sky, casting eerie glows over rows of rusted starships. Some were stripped down to their bones, others barely held together by hasty welds and wishful thinking. A human walked through the lot, hands tucked into a worn flight jacket. His posture screamed ex-pilot, disciplined, deliberate, but weighed down by something unspoken. He hadn't flown in years. Regulations, politics, bureaucracy, none of that mattered out here. All he needed was a ship, something that could fly, no questions asked. A counter at the edge of the lot hummed with an outdated energy field. Behind it, a receptionist lounged, a six-eyed, chitinous alien with a lazy flick of its mandibles. It barely glanced up. "Human," it rasped. "Buying or wasting my time?" "Buying," the pilot said. "Something cheap, but space-worthy," the alien huffed, waving one spindly limb toward a cluster of neglected ships. "Far corner. Take your pick." "No refunds." The pilot wove through the wreckage, eyes scanning for potential. Most of these weren't worth the scrap they were built from. Hulls corroded, thrusters missing, control panels gutted. Then he saw it. A ship, sleek beneath its layers of dust. The design was strange, curved where most were angular, built from a metal that seemed untouched by time. He ran a hand over the hull. The markings were unfamiliar, symbols etched in a language long dead. He stepped inside. The cockpit was pristine, panels intact, screens dark but undamaged. A ship like this should have been worth a fortune, yet here it was, abandoned. Back at the counter, he placed a handful of credits down. "That one." The receptionist glanced up, then let out a clicking laugh. "That one does not obey." "What does that mean?" "No refunds," the alien repeated, snatching the credits. The pilot hesitated, but his gut told him to take the risk. He had flown everything from cargo haulers to military fighters. One stubborn ship wouldn't be the thing to beat him. Back in the cockpit, he powered it up. The systems hummed to life, lights flickering across the panels. The controls were unfamiliar, but functional. He gripped the throttle and eased it forward. Nothing. He adjusted the power settings, recalibrated the startup sequence. The ship sat unresponsive. Frustration bubbled up. He tried again more forcefully this time. Still nothing. Outside, the receptionist was already moving on to another customer. The ship wasn't broken. It simply wasn't listening. A challenge, then. The pilot leaned back, exhaling slowly. "All right," he muttered, staring at the dead console. "Let's see what you've got." The pilot steadied his breathing. Panic wouldn't help. He had flown ships with failing engines, battled through storms with broken navigation, even crash-landed once with no landing gear. This was just another problem to solve. He studied the alien symbols, searching for patterns. They pulsed in rhythmic intervals, shifting in ways that almost felt alive. If this was a system, it wasn't one made for human hands. No buttons, no levers, just raw interaction. Fine. If the ship wasn't responding to commands, maybe it was reacting to something else. He leaned forward, focusing on the symbols. They flickered, rearranging as if acknowledging his attention. Interesting. He tested a theory, reaching out with intent rather than action. The ship hummed in response. A slight course adjustment. It wasn't direct control, but it was something. It wasn't that the ship didn't obey. It was that it didn't take orders the way he expected. It was looking for something different. A connection. He adjusted his mindset, treating it less like a machine and more like a conversation. Instead of forcing movement, he guided it. Instead of demanding, he suggested. The ship reacted faster now, shifting course subtly, but still not entirely within his control. It was learning him as much as he was learning it. A test. That's what this was. This ship had been built for something else, someone else. Its previous pilots weren't human, and its systems weren't designed for human input. That's why it had been abandoned. No one could control it. But humans were different, adaptable, stubborn. If no one else had cracked the code, that just meant he'd be the first. The symbols pulsed faster, the hum growing stronger. The ship wasn't rejecting him anymore. It was considering him. One last push. He closed his eyes, blocking out everything but the rhythm of the ship, the pulse of energy in the controls. He reached, not with hands, but with instinct, and the ship responded. The engines flared, the course stabilizing. For the first time since he stepped aboard, the ship wasn't acting on its own. It was listening. Not fully tamed. Not yet. But it was a start.